Thanks to
Matt
Cal.
Foss is from Foss Consulting. Matt's mission is to show you that there's a better way to gain the transaction you crave. He'll share a practical approach to giving every team member a meaningful review that ties performance to core values, ensures people are in the right seats, and strengthens the culture of your business. If you didn't know, a little fun fact about Matt, and if you go and look at LinkedIn, Matt was played college football at the University of Indiana. Says the girl who's a big Penn State fan. No offense, Mr. Foss. Still love you the most, even though you bleed red and I bleed blue. The stage is yours, my friend.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. How is everybody doing? Hopefully we got 127 people on here, so I love it. So this is my family. I played at IU, and what's funny is this picture is actually taken at Ohio State last year, right before we got beat. So this weekend, if all of you are football fans or not, Indiana is playing Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. And if all of you are from Penn State, this is the one time you can cheer for IU. We need as many faithfuls as possible, but I do what I do. I have a huge amount of passion. I've owned businesses in my past. I've sold to private equity, and now I work with business leaders, business owners, and I do it all for these four right here, my family, and I think that's where we all do our work. But the great thing is I love what I do and have a ton of passion. So today, what we're really going to talk about is tips and tricks to have a great world-class annual review, right? And to give honest coaching through like data and evidence. And a lot of leaders, a lot of business people, a lot of mid-managers get to this level of doing these annual reviews. And it's like, oh, but as we all know, as we've come up through our careers, wherever you are, this review is incredibly important when you're receiving it. Right. This is the time of year that you're like, hey, I really want to understand and know, what my boss or what my director has to say about how I've done. And I would say that the reviews that I see are absolutely horrendous. And this is why, is because most reviews are done based on a fact that you're looking at the entire year, right? So the true purpose of an annual review is not to just look at that entire year, but look at the quarterly performances that they've all had. So really, you're going to get, how do you have a great annual review this year? But this is really more for what you should do next year. Because what most teams do is in December, maybe January, you do a review and you think about what that review looked like, how they did the entire year. And most people are really looking at what the last quarter, the last 3 months, maybe the last half of the year, and how people did. And that's it's not a great insight for those people of how they've grown over the last 12 months that they've been with your team. So the purpose of the annual review is to build a complete, accurate, evidence-based. This is not emotional. So many reviews get emotional. Hey, you did or didn't do this. This is how I felt that you did, rather than being based on data. So what you're going to find today is if you don't have data to be able to really talk to your people about it, you're really coming from more of an emotional standpoint. I have no doubt all of you have a ton of data, but are we really reviewing this with our people? So you'll see that I love doing quarterly performance reviews. The reason is, if you do quarterly performance reviews, and this is a conversation, then now you have 3 conversations through the year that then correlate into this annual review. So you can really see step by step how they've done. Then 90-day rocks. So in EOS, we have 90-day rocks, which are basically every quarter's strategic goals. Then you're going to have a 1-year strategy, and then we break it down in my teams of what do we focus on as a leadership in each department, and even down to the individual in the next 90 days. What's got to be your focus? What's that big thing that you can do that's going to push the business forward to where we need to be? Did you get that done or did you not? And then scorecards. So scorecards they can be called KPIs, they can be called measurables, but these are the weekly things that everybody in the organization does to know that they are actually doing their job, they're being accountable, and they're doing what they need to do to have success. And then the other part of an annual review is the values alignment, and then any documented behavior, right? Anything that has either been really good or something that we need corrected throughout the year. So we're going to look at all of this stuff collectively and have a great annual review off-site, not in your office where people are knocking on the door. Have it intimate, have it a situation where you're really investing the time into this person that you're giving this review. And another thing, I don't know if I have this on this deck, but my personal opinion is in an annual review, you do not give any pay increases or bonuses. This is a pure conversation on how that other human being is doing based on the goals, the objectives, their seat, and the direction that you gave them as a leader. Because most people in an annual review, they hear what you're saying, but they're just waiting for you to say, hey, Matt, you got a increase of this, or you didn't, or hey, this year we're going to give a bonus. Where you can separate money and the review, people start really listening and understanding that this is a coaching session to make them great. All right, so this is kind of my quarterly conversation. So I believe we have 3 quarterly conversations throughout the year. Minimal, we have a quarterly conversation in July, and then we have this annual review. We've got a lot of data here that we're reviewing, our quarterly goals, our scorecards, anything that they're doing really well or areas that they need to improve. And then the annual is a really formal, hey, how did you do? What did the year look like? And then really when you get to this annual review, this employee or the person that's accountable to you is not going to be surprised at all, because really you've had a review with them every quarter to a degree. That's a conversation. In that annual review, they're going to know, have they stepped their game up? Has it been the same, or have they actually gone backwards? So the outcomes of the annual review. By the end of the annual review, we want to have a clear understanding of the performance overall for the year, document strengths, identify the gaps, evidence of the seat ownership. This is huge. Like I am a huge accountability person, and it has nothing to do, maybe because I'm an athlete, but I think when you're accountable, it's the case that you know exactly what you're supposed to do in your seat. And if there's somebody that you're doing an annual review with and they don't know what they're supposed to do in that seat clearly, is because you, the leader, has not defined it for them, or it hasn't been clear, or you haven't had continual conversations on where they're doing well and where they're not based on your expectations. And then having a clear elevation plan for the year end. So at the end, we really want to say, okay, here's the year in review. These are the things we got to work on. And then this is the plan for next year. Let's go. So you're really getting a review of the last year. You're kind of saying, hey, where are we at? And as your leader, the person that you're accountable to, this is where I expect you to go next year. So you're getting all of this wrapped up in one meeting, so they have some really good insights of where they were, where they are, where they need to be. And hopefully I'm not too loud. And anybody can throw a big thumbs up or a thumbs down if I'm being too loud. All right, the standards of a great annual review. The leader must, this is key for all of us that hate annual reviews, because you have to do so many and you have to prepare so much. You're going at it the wrong way. An annual review needs to be about asking questions, because if you tell the person, this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing wrong, you're not actually understanding if that person that you're giving the review understands what they're doing right or wrong. So asking 80% of the questions and making 20% of the statements is huge. So please, in the chat, put a 1 if you believe that you actually ask 80% of the questions and 20% of the statements. Put a 1 in there. Use evidence-based. So once again, we go back to this kind of scorecard, 90-day rocks. That is the evidence. That is the data that we're looking at to go, hey, we agreed we were going to do these things in the next 90 days. These are our 90-day goals. And these are our scorecards or our KPIs that we look at every week. How are you doing on these? They know if they've hit them, if they're done, if they're not done. So ultimately, they've got to come to this meeting and all those quarterly conversations with that data going, hey, in this month, I had 2 big goals. I got both of them done. Well, they know already in that review that this is going to probably be a pretty positive review. If they didn't get those two things done and in their KPIs weekly, they are way off track, they already know there's an issue. We don't need to tell them that as a leader. The key is if you don't have those goals and if you don't have those KPIs, that's when they don't know. They're just kind of wandering around. They're just kind of doing stuff. They're just showing up, and you're having to tell them week in, week out what to do rather than giving them clarity. So the other big thing about having a great annual review is to stay calm, neutral, and direct. Like, don't get emotional. And trust me, I've made this mistake in getting emotional in annual reviews. Stay neutral. Don't have an opinion. Let them tell you, and then you give yours very directly. Protect the relationship. This is all about building on the relationship, not ripping it down. And this does not mean you cannot be direct. This does not mean that you don't give them the feedback that they need to get better, but you got to protect the relationship. So this is why it's not personal. It's all about business, right? And if you can give somebody direct, hard feedback and they understand that they are not meeting the expectations because they've been laid out very clearly, all you're doing is giving the feedback to make them better. It's out of love rather than this review where you're kind of pounding your fist and saying you're not good or, hey, you're great. This is very much a coaching session to get somebody to a level that they never thought they could get, and they will appreciate it. And the other thing that I really want, before I really go into the slide, is think about yourself personally in your life. Who is the person that was probably told you the things that you didn't want to hear? A coach, a parent, a grandparent, a friend. Well, those people do it because they care. The people that don't give direct, honest, candid feedback, they don't really care too much about your success or leveling you up in life or in business. So just know the more direct you are really means the more you care because you're taking the time to give them the feedback that they need. So you end with that clarity. All right, the structure of the review, really simple. You started off, obviously you start off with some type of connecting point of things that they've done well, a conversation, but then you start on those 90-day, hey, in the fourth quarter, these were the goals and objectives that you had. How are you doing on them? The next is values alignment. You evaluate what your core values are to how they are. You look at their seat ownership, the seat in the organization, whatever seat it is, are they owning it? And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. End of the year performance results, and then the evaluation plan moving to the year ahead. So out of the 120 people on here, if you're actually listening and anybody is running EOS now or any type of system like that, where you have a very structured accountability chart or org chart that has detailed what is actually in their job. And this isn't a job description. These are the roles that they own or the responsibilities. Throw a 2 in the chat for me if you actually have that in your business right now. So these rocks, I like it, Joseph. These rocks are these big goals that you have in the next 90 days. And everybody that's put in a chat kind of knows what rocks are or these goals. So if you don't have set goals for somebody every 90 days, that's the first thing you need to do starting the beginning of the year. Because if you're going to do an annual review and you're going to review somebody and you don't have stated goals and objectives for them, that is your issue as a leader. That is the leadership of your organization's issue. We have to know what the organization's goals and objectives are, and then we have to have goals and objectives that match to help us get there all the way down through. So if I'm a frontline employee, I can still have goals. They don't have to be big and strategic. They can be very tactical. So we got to make sure everybody has at least one quarterly goal. The next is scorecards. So you have to have these measurables. Then you have to have goals. Then you have to have who owns it. And then through this, you build this and you look at it every single week. So if you have KPIs or if you have scorecards, throw a number 1 in the chat, because this is how we're looking at every week. Is everybody accountable to what they're doing? I love it, Joe. So if you're doing this, if you have the goals for the quarter and then you have these scorecards that you're looking at every week, guess what? These reviews become that much easier because you're being incredibly direct every week. They're being honest with themselves, saying, am I on track? Am I off track? And that gives the ability as a leader to be able to coach them up in the moment rather than coach them up after the quarter or after the end of the year. And there are so many businesses out there that I've worked with, and then I know that they do these quarterly reviews, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, Matt, we had a lot of goals at the beginning of the year, and I'm really disappointed that we didn't hit this, this, and this, and you had a lot to do with that. And we literally, throughout the entire year, you think because you're having a conversation with somebody or they're working on a project, they know exactly what they need to be working on. That's not the case. You have to have weekly KPIs, and you have to have these 90-day quarterly goals so they know what to focus on, because the business changes so much. We've got to be clear on what the focus needs to be. So reviewing of the fourth quarter 90-day rocks. So the leader that's doing the annual presents, here's the total rocks that you had. They had 4. They completed 2. That's a 50%. And then on their scorecards, their completion rate was 60%. So now in this conversation in the last 90 days, we're talking about facts. We're talking about data. We're not talking about assumptions and emotion. So now you can ask some really good questions to these people of, hey, what stands out for you in Q4? What sprint or what 90-day goal drove the best performance? Where did you fall short and what caused it? That right there, where did you fall short and what caused it? These are key questions that as leaders, everybody on this call, you all know where they fell short and you probably know what caused it. But in most reviews, what you're doing is you're telling them what it is. You get so much more information if you ask them, hey, Matt, where did you fall short last year? Or where'd you fall short on that quarterly rock? Well, the process that I laid out, I should have done this. I didn't communicate to this department. And I said it was going to get done sooner than it is because, I didn't adjust other things that I was doing. And ultimately, I didn't have the resources that I had. I had a bad game plan. Okay, what are you going to do to change that? Okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. That is a much different conversation than when you go, Matt, well, why'd you fall short? And I go, I don't know. Well, that tells you a lot about the person, and it tells you a lot about what's going to happen in the future. So now if you ask the question, instead of telling them how they fell short, you're going to understand, are they processing in their brain what they're doing and how they did it and how they're going to change it in the future? Or are you just telling them, and every time something goes wrong, you're going to have to tell them? Being a leader it's about guiding them, asking them, seeing where they are, rather than continually just tell them. Because when you tell them, then they just come to you like a little kid. Okay, tell me what I need to do now. It's like my kids taking their shoes off in the house. All right. So then values alignment. So everybody that has values, give me a huge thumbs up. Stated values in your organization. And I hope I see a whole bunch of thumbs up, because if there's not, this is a big one that if you do not have this, our people, we cannot judge. We cannot help them understand how they align with our organization if we don't have values. All right. So evaluate consistently how they live the core values. Where they best live the core values this year, where they struggle. Love all the thumbs up, by the way. I love this. What is one value moment you're most proud of? Like, that's a big one, right? Instead of going through your normal, okay, here are our 5 core values, and like, what's the one moment this year that you had a huge impact on the core values? Well, I helped Sam in finance because payroll had an issue and I didn't even know payroll. I just hung out with him and sat in the office until 11 o'clock until he got it done. And I was just there for him as a teammate. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know you did that, right? These are things that people can kind of pull out and really show pride. And areas where that they struggled or didn't consistently live in and they knew it. Well, guess what? They know that. So then they can control it. they can correct it as well. Once again, you'll see a lot of questions. So this is a people analyzer that we use in EOS. And what we do is we put the employee's name, who's accountable, and then these are the core values. Very simply stated: humbly confident, grow or die, help first, do the right thing. And what we do is we rate this as a plus is most of the time they exude that value. A plus minus is sometimes, and a minus means rarely. So we actually rate the people on how they exude or they follow each one of these values. This is incredibly direct. This is incredibly honest. This is incredibly candid. And then if they are not a plus and they're a plus minus or a minus, you give them the feedback. And where we have a bar is out of this, there's 5 values. So you have to have at least 3 pluses and 2 plus minuses. That's the bar. Like if you have 4 pluses or 5 pluses, hey, that's great. But if you have below 3 pluses and 2 plus minuses, like we've got to really understand if this person fits our values. If they have any minuses, they do not fit our values, because the values are so important. And then we have to have corrective action to get them above that bar or get rid of those minuses. And we'll do this on a quarterly basis too. So that's how you evaluate without a lot of emotion, very direct. So seat ownership. So we have the values, which is the right person. Seat ownership is the right seat. You hear it a lot: right person, right seat. So if you own the seat, that means you GWC it, which that means you get it, you want it, and you have the capacity. I'm not going to go into a ton on the get it, want it capacity, but that just means that ultimately they really own this seat. So the grounds for this section: where did you own the seat? Which responsibilities need a bigger upgrade? Which part of the seat did you elevate the most? And where are you still inconsistent? So you'll see in this whole review, the questions put it back onto the employee. You're not sitting there talking 90% of the time and going through this long list of things that you want to like bullet point that they don't do. You still have that list, but you're asking them the questions. And imagine as a leader how great it feels if your sense that they have this issue or they need to correct this thing, that they tell you that they have that same issue and that's what they need to correct. Now you're on the same page. And if they don't say those things, there's a section in here that you can then highlight the areas that they oversaw. And once again, you've got an employee that sits there and goes, I don't even know what our core values are. Or, I don't know. That says a lot. And as a leader, that's when leadership comes in, is now you got to make a decision. You got to make a decision if that person is the right person on the bus. Are they going to get you where you need to? Maybe because they're right in the seat, but maybe they're not a good cultural fit. And that'll kill your company faster than anything. Somebody that's in your organization that doesn't fit your culture and your values. So the accountability chart. So this is what I was talking about earlier when we got those whole bunch of thumbs up, is being very clear on what the organization looks like structure-wise, and then each one of these roles, what they're responsible to do. So this is where we're really understanding, hey, do you own the seat? And GWC stands for, do they get it? Do they get what it takes to be successful in the seat? So in the sales seat, do they truly get these things? Whoops. Want it means, do they really want the job? Are they doing the things they need to? And capacity is the ability to do the job, comprehend it, and be able to have success in it. And if they don't have capacity at some points, that just means they need more training. So now we go back to the people analyzer that I showed you earlier. So here, is this the right fit, right? Do they find our values? And then the get it, want it capacity is, do they fit the seat? So right person is values, right seat is GWC. So this people analyzer alone, once again, data driven, not emotionally driven. You show them and you walk them through it, that if they are the right person, they fit our values. If they're in the right seat, they get all yeses in GWC. Get it, want it, capacity. If they don't get the seat, you just put a no. So to actually be in the right seat, you have to have all 3 yeses. The only thing that you can have a no in is that capacity, like I said, because it might be somebody that's new in a seat. They've just, either been hired or they transferred to another seat in the organization, and they just need some training because their capacity isn't at full level yet. So the full year performance, you're going to review the total 90-day rocks for the entire year. So once again, if you don't have these 90-day goals, or you don't have measurables or KPIs, it's the first thing you got to do in January. You got to have goals every quarter. So in this last year, there was 14 goals every quarter that they had. So this is over the entire year. They completed 14 out of 18. So that's 83%. That's darn good throughout the year, right? So now we're looking at the entire 12 months. So the annual scorecard measurables, they were at 80. And if you remember, in the last quarter, they were like 60 on their scorecard, and they were 2 out of 4. Well, if we just look at the last quarter, which most people do, if you just look at the last quarter, you go, man, Matt, 50% on your goals, 60% on your measurables or your scorecards or your KPIs, like, we've got a big problem. Well, now I look at all the numbers, I go, throughout the year was pretty darn good on your goals. Hey, scorecards, 80%, pretty darn good. What happened in the fourth quarter? What was going on? So now we're just looking at the fourth quarter rather than saying, hey, over the last year, you didn't do very well. Data is huge. The full year coaching questions. Once again, come back to the questions. What trends do you see across all 4 quarters? In this review, they would say, hey, I did really good first and second quarter, third quarter, I crushed it. Fourth quarter, yeah, my KPIs, maybe I took the goals up and they were unrealistic. I don't know, but you want to hear from them what they saw across all 4 quarters. What did your performance improve, hold, or decline? What patterns repeated through the year, and what surprises? This is great. What surprised you about your results? Because most of the time in these reviews, they're surprised because they're not looking at the data enough. But when you start doing quarterly reviews or quarterly conversations and these annual reviews in this way, they're going to start looking at their metrics a whole bunch more. And when somebody has a goal and objective that is very concise and very direct, guess what? You start getting a lot more traction and goals start getting hit. You start moving the business that much faster. So the elevating plan coaching questions. Ask these questions. What are the non-negotiables we must elevate for this year? And you're asking them. Where do you need more coaching or structure? What do you need from me? This has to be a question. This isn't just about what they're doing. What do you need from me? Man, are you going to get some good insights? And there might be some things that you disagree as a leader. Like, oh, I need more of your time. You don't give me this. You don't give me that. I need X, Y, Z. Remember, that's where you stay neutral and you stay calm. You're just listening to them. And then you ask a question back. Okay, if you need more of my time, what does that look like in your eyes? Let them solve the issue. And if it's a question that you feel needs to be answered, you don't have to answer it in that annual meeting. You can say, hey, I will get back to you on that in the next week, 2 weeks, whatever, set a timeline, but you don't have to answer any questions of needs that they have of you in that meeting, because you might have 5 more, you might have 20 more reviews that you have, and you got to understand the most critical things your team needs from you. What behaviors must you eliminate? What blind spots do you have? What blind spots do I have as a leader? It's another big one. And what's the first thing you want to attack in Q1? All right, now we've gone from Q4 last year to boom. Now we're going to where are we going? What is it that you think is important? And the more you do these great reviews, the more they will be prepared, or you'll find that people don't prepare and it frustrates you in a huge way. And those are probably the people that aren't getting the things done day in and day out in the business. Closing the review. So the leader ends with clear alignment. The summary of the full year performance. Hey, this is what we went through. Hey, this is how you hit the values. This is how you hit the seat. What are the 2 or 3 focused improvements that they need to do? It could be professionally, it could be, organizationally, it could be process, it could be whatever the focused improvements for 2026. You want to document it. You want to be clear on it. They have to be clear to you on what you mean. Another big thing in reviews is there's a lot of talking. It's like this webinar. I got 30 minutes, so I'm going like no other. Well, the thing is, you got to ask them, okay, this is what we discussed. Say it back to me. What are the 2 or 3 things that we agreed that we're going to work on? And when they say them back to you, if they're not in line with your thought or what you want, you got to say, okay, let me say that one more time because I probably was not clear enough. Okay, now can you say it back to me on exactly what those are? And once they do that, the communication is absolutely clear. And this is another reason that I believe giving any type of pay or talking about any type of money during a review totally eliminates somebody really thinking about where do I need to improve, because all they're doing is doing the yes, yes, yes. Okay, that's right. And they're waiting to hear, are they making more money? So if you separate that and you tell them you're separating it, that this is all about giving you world-class coaching and elevation for your personal and your career, then they're not worried about the money. They're dialed into what you're saying, and you're going to have a lot better connection. The elevation, talk about the elevation plan, how progress will be measured. So you as a leader on these areas of the elevation plan and the focus improvements, they have to be measurable. They have to be something that is truly, I call them a SMART objective: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. They have to be time-based of like, when are we going to get these things done so we know that you're having success and you're completing and doing what you said you're going to do, and me as the leader is doing what I promised you I'm going to do. And then how the quarterly performance reviews will track these improvements. So now you're at the annual. Now you're going to have, in 90 days, you're going to have this quarterly performance conversation review. It doesn't have to be documented. It doesn't have to be something that HR takes over, but this is something that, hey, you want to touch base and have a very focused touch base in 90 days and say, hey, we talked 90 days about these 2 or 3 critical things. We had this one big values thing that we need to work on. How are we doing? This is, how do you feel like you're doing? And I want to give my perspective on how I feel you're doing. No ambiguity, no confusion, complete clarity. Businesses run, cultures thrive. People stay in organizations when they get absolute clarity and they know every day, every week, every month, every quarter, when they come to work and they roll that chair into their desk, if they're having success, they're going to stay there. If they don't know if they're truly having success, if they're doing a good job, it's going to be a lot harder to keep great people. So these are some great books. That's the end of but these are some great books that I love that have to do with radical candor, is having direct, honest conversations with your people. The more direct you are, even though it's hard, that feeling in your stomach when you got to tell an employee something really hard, if you shy away from that, that is your moment to be a leader. Because remember, the people that love you, the people that care about you, the bosses that you've had in your life that has helped you get to where it is, they've told you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Radical Candor is a great book to read. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is an incredible book to read to really build trust within an organization so you can have some of these conversations. And The Boys in the Boat, those top 3 books are great as far as having team unity, great conversations, being direct. That's all I've got. Hopefully everybody was great. I got some thumbs up. I didn't get any questions and I didn't get any thumbs down, which is great.
Thank you, Matt. Wonderful as always, and so intentional and purposeful. Love your energy. Love the 90-day rocks. I think, these are good, actionable goals as we're all coming into review season. Thank you for joining us today.
Have a great holiday. See you, everybody.
Thank you. Next.